And I'm just picturing how that sounds with a lot of people screaming it around you. That's that kind of chorus. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Lowend University. Disconnected was originally from the debut face-to-face album Don't Turn Away, released in 1992. Then it was remixed and released again on 1994's Over It EP. And then it was re-recorded and released yet again for the 1995 album Big Choice. And that's the version our Patreon community has urged me to hear today. They did vote this track into first place last month over there, and I want to thank our patrons Chris and Tom C for requesting this track. Now, it's been a good long while since this has happened, but this is actually my second time to make this video. The first being about 2.5 weeks ago. I was through the songs maybe. Second chorus, I looked over and the camera wasn't recording. It's the worst feeling. I forgot to press record, and there's just nothing you can do in that moment other than make the video again. So here I am for take 2. I am recording this time. I'm looking at the little red light. The only unfortunate part is that I have already heard this little argumentative banter between the band and the producer, the band and the label. And as funny as that is, there's a lot of truth to that. That's a real reality for a lot of bands. And it's funny that they sort of leaned into it and embraced it as part of the re-release. But it gives a lot of context to why the song was re-released so many times and their frustration with it, I imagine. But without further ado, let's hear it all again. Here is Face to Face, Disconnected, take 2.
Cool, I think we're done, you guys.
Let's get out of here.
It's just one more thing I wanted to talk to you about.
At first I was like, what is this?
Disconnected.
Am I on the right track?
K-Rock have just gone on it.
Yeah.
We're starting
Did
to
they
get
prank
a lot
me?
of airplay, and I just wanted you to talk to you about putting it on the new Big Choice album.
Disconnected?
Absolutely.
Audience groans.
Absolutely. I think it's got a place on there.
I don't know. We already talked about this. I don't think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't think it's so cool.
Well, it may not. You may not think it's cool because you've been playing it for 3 years, right? That's the only problem you've got.
Yeah, we've been playing it
But
forever,
that's a big
man.
problem. We've hashed over and over this.
They're
song.
tired of it.
We don't want to drive it into the ground.
But you guys, you gotta understand that it's a good song.
I know,
but
Good song.
our
We're
whole
over it.
It is a good song. I'm excited to hear it again.
Well, you're saying that. You may be over it, but there's millions of people out there who've not heard it yet.
Just
to them it's
millions.
a new
Yeah, but
song.
it's dead already.
Just millions.
Another reason for people to call us sellouts.
Yeah, we don't want to lose the credibility
Wait a
with our
minute.
following and all
just
that.
a second. Don't talk to me about sellouts. I run a record company here, you know?
But we're the band.
Right, you care about selling records. We care.
Yeah, even though this is intended to be a funny thing, that's such a true, real struggle. Bands feeling like they can say, we're the band, we have the final say, but really you signed your rights away. You've signed on the dotted line, and it just gets dicey between the business and the music, and that's a very real thing, despite the actual context or history of that. So there's some truth in there.
Care about making good music,
Not screwing everybody
not
around.
trying to.
I think you're absolutely wrong. I think we've got to do this, and it's the best idea.
But I don't want to.
Hey, no offense, Phil, but there's no way
Yeah.
in hell this song's going on this record.
I chuckled so hard when I first heard that because it's like the band coming in and playing the song almost cut them off. It's right into it, right from that bass slide. So again, before we keep going, I actually went back and checked out the other version on Don't Turn Away. I think it's just because that one's queued up on Spotify. So I went and listened to it again. I wasn't sure if I was going to just wait a while to do it, but I said, oh, well, I've already heard the song. Let me come back and make the video. But I ended up hearing the original version. And I didn't realize that bass was a 2-chord or 2-note part there. It's a bit more buried on this version, even though I think this version sounds better sonically. Sounds like there was a bit more budget behind it. The guitars are a bit louder. But I missed it the first time because I kind of thought the bass part was just following the roots. I didn't really hear that double stop. So now I know it's there. This is maybe a little bit of a blessing in disguise because I would have got some flack for missing that part. All right, where we start?
No way in hell.
Yeah. It's tucked back there. And it's a great part. It's kind of weird of me to say something like this is classic Matt Riddle because I've only heard so much, but based on what I've heard from him, he has a knack for these really catchy intros or bass parts that seem like just bass chords, but really subtly tuck some melody into it because this one is sort of... Then it goes down to the 1 and 3, and then down to the next chord, but 1 and 5. So it's kind of has this. But the way the notes move together, I just love the way he kind of crafts these parts. There's a simplicity to them that's effective. I do wish this version was louder like the actual 1992 version. Nonetheless, cool part to set it up. And what this does, saves the lower notes when he goes down to... It saves that for when the song actually starts getting going in verse 1. And as a bass player, I often find you can kind of overlook the range of what you play. Save those lower notes for intentional moments of impact. You know, if you're playing a 5-string, sometimes I'll wait for those really low notes on maybe the chorus. Play things up higher and then kind of go low for the chorus. So the range of when you play something on a bass is really important and often overlooked. And I think that has an impact here, starting up high with that little melody and then kind of going down for the verse when it starts, you know, driving. Cool. The break here. See, now it has impact. This sounds like one of those choruses when you see face-to-face live that everyone just has to be screaming that. It's for a few reasons. Number one, it uses very few notes. In fact, it rides on that one note. It's kind of on the upbeat. And it goes down maybe 1 or 2 notes and repeats it again. I think it's just... You know, I've talked about this one-note groove thing in other videos. That's why it's simple. You don't have to remember a melody. You just shout it. And the fact that they chose the word no, I didn't have the lyrics pulled up the first time. I do now. They're saying, no, you don't know what you will give up. But they don't go, no. It's like, nah. They kind of use the ah syllable, which makes you just want to, just shout with them. Of course, you wouldn't sing at that pitch and that intensity going, no. Point being, it's an inviting chant. So, hell of a chorus. And one thing about the verses here that a lot of you have told me in terms of Matt Riddle's playing is that he's primarily always been a fingerstyle player. I missed this the first time too because I started saying like, wow, he's really downpicking that fast. So I'm kind of second guessing that. It sounds very much like a downpick and the tone and just the uniformity of the bass notes, but you can get that same tone out of a bass just if you strike really hard. And I feel like a P bass is one of the top basses you can kind of get away making fingerstyle sound more like a pick. And there's actually a really old lesson here on the YouTube channel where I talk about that. If it's still up, I'll link it below because it sheds light on this exact technique. You know, when you play fingerstyle, you want to pluck through a string and kind of back towards the string behind it. But if you kind of rock your wrist angle back and slap more down towards the bass, through the string, kind of towards the pickup, you get that more unhinged, energetic, aggressive, clanky tone. But in a full mix setting, it can kind of sound like a pick. So I feel like the P bass does that thing really well. Okay, let's keep going. Little counter melody. See, if I were to go back and play along with that more in the subdued fingerstyle way that I would play, you can hear that I'm subdividing, but it sounds like fingers. And then I'll switch to a more clanky type of approach, and it just sounds a bit more like that does. So I feel like Matt Riddle's commented on a few of my videos. Maybe he can clear this up, or some of you will know. Nonetheless, it's a cool effect. It just is a nod to the uniformity of the technique to have those bass notes really consistent. Of course, amps, gears, compressors, effects, it all helps, but it's got an energy to it. And the fact that I can't really tell is a cool thing. See? Normal. Versus.
Trust is something that comes easy when you've never been promises and words are said. Your decision to accept it. Accept it. Now you don't know what you would give up. Now you don't know what you would give up. You don't know what you want.
That's a catchy thing too. They stick that main chorus melody in the back of your mind, get you singing it, then they put it in the background and come in with this other vocal line that says you don't know what you want. It may take you years to find out. I also love the simplicity of these lyrics. It's like 2 stanzas. That's always a cool thing when you hear a song and it sounds like a lot being said, but when you read it, the actual words on the page are like, that's it. So it's cool how it was adapted to the music and really stretched out and just so catchy. Again, less is more, I think, here. And another really cool thing I noticed as well is that nothing in this song really converges into one singular entity, musically speaking, until the chorus. What I've noticed in the verses here is that the guitar, one of the guitar layers is actually just writing on the same note the entire time. Didn't catch this at all the first time. Okay, there's a harmonic. It sounds like it's this kind of thing where you just lay your hand over fret 7 and kind of get the... You can hear that just, it's stationary, the whole verse. It's a subtle layer.
Lies and promises and words are said. Your decision to accept.
And what happens there is you have that happening while bass is changing and maybe some other guitar layers are changing. So you're creating a cool interval there that kind of clashes. It almost reminds me of the intro. Because the chords are the same. You have E and B, so it's going. But that harmonic in that guitar part. And it almost makes the entire verse feel unresolved because nothing's really just converging into, everything's not coming together until those choruses. So these little layers are really effective to your ear at having a big difference in tonality when the chorus hits. It's like, okay, everything seems together now, which is duh. That's what you do during a chorus. But when you go back and peel back the layers of this stuff, there's a reason for it. Again, I didn't even catch that the first time because it sounds and is blended very well, blended really well. Okay.
See how
the guitars are hanging over there? Now it's together. Like a reprise of the intro. And it wasn't until this part that I thought, okay, maybe it is fingerstyle because that doesn't sound like a pick being used to me there. It's got a gentleness. It's futile to sit here and really act like I know. Sometimes you can really tell. Of course, that's a pick, but sometimes it's just tough to tell. But I like this little groove here. It's a reprise of the intro, more syncopated, and still retains that same pattern of the intro where everything isn't just a power chord. He's not just sliding around the same shape. It's not... Because that's the chord progression. He's being a little more clever with the top notes, doing some fourths, some thirds, fifths, and then this little callback is the same thing. Fourth again, so from a fifth interval to a fourth interval, that top note stays the same. So it's very similar to the intro, just different notes, different articulations. Clever writing. Where's that start? And what's cool is that it's almost in reverse or the opposite of what he did in the intro, because the intro, I believe he's doing that G sharp minor chord is 1 and 3, like this sound. But in this part, that same G sharp minor chord, he's actually doing the 5th instead of the 3rd. So it seems like some of the chords are in reverse of one another from the intro. I don't know if that was intentional, but just cool little thing. And I'm just picturing how that sounds with a lot of people screaming it around you. That's that kind of chorus. It is. Heard that little bass intro creep in there. Well, I don't want to jinx it just yet, but it seems like we're still recording. I've made it through. No errors this time. It was cool to come back and, have already heard the song a few times, especially hearing the OG version, which is actually the top one on their Spotify page. Allow me to really realize that bass intro was more than I thought. And with bass parts sometimes being really hard to hear, maybe I should do that more often. I don't know, but this is a great track. Super catchy. When I hear that chorus, I just picture a live show. I imagine that's the right energy. You just have to scream along with it. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today. If you'd like to participate in this and request songs and be a part of our community and support the channel while you're at it, come find us at patreon.com/LoanedUniversity. I've reviewed 20-something punk albums by now. I have a lot of bass lessons, music theory lessons, tons of resources there. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, please do that now. I love you all. We'll see you in the next one.